Hello everyone, Dark Geyser here again, back with another in my series of Space Engineers tutorial videos. Today we're going to be doing a demonstration of some of the ways that you can use the new sorting blocks. Now, I already have a sorting block video on YouTube, but the demonstration that I made was a little bit vague, basically as if a ship were coming by and just dropping off a large number of random components and ores and so on and so forth. This system is a little bit more specific. I use something very similar to this in my survival world, and I found it to be very, very effective and very efficient. For purposes of our demonstration, we're going to be grinding up a respawn ship, and boy, haven't we all done that at one time or another. However, for those that do play survival, that go out and they capture other freighters that might be flying through their airspace or what have you, grinding them up by hand tends to be a bit tedious. This system is much more automated and therefore much more efficient. On the business end, we have our grinding phase. You can build this as large as you want. I recommend starting out with something relatively small. This one is just large enough to encompass the initial respawn ship, plus a little extra to catch the occasional piece of flying debris. And then you can always expand on that later. Then we have a bank of conveyors. Now, I use the conveyors because even though the grinders have ports on both sides and at the back, they do not have ports at the top. So while I could be just attaching these side to side and then running tubes or running conveyors to connect the various rows, I have found through personal experience that you can only get so much material going through a conveyor tube or going through a conveyor block at a time. So the more conveyors, the more conveyor tubes that you have in the system, the faster that you can get material to move. Now here we have our initial grinding container, and as usual I have marked all of these containers so that you can tell at a glance what each one is for. And here we have our initial sorting block, and this sorting block is set pretty much for everything. Its entire purpose, and it is set to drain all. It is our grind sorter, and it is whitelisted to basically encompass everything in the game. Ammunition components, it doesn't matter. Everything goes through this, and its primary purpose is to empty out this container before it gets too full. Now, this container, this sorting container, this is where all the action takes place. This is known as the initial sorting container. And unfortunately, all of the ports are covered, so I'm going to have to show you that from the control panel. But the initial sorting container... Oops, we missed it. The initial sorting container here, and as you can see, all of these sorting containers are empty except for the production container, and all of our actual machinery is empty. The initial sorting container, everything gets pulled off of the grinders, it goes into the initial sorting container, and then everything gets separated. As I demonstrated in my other sorting block video, we have these all set up. This block is set for cobalt ore, iron ore, and nickel ore, and then that feeds directly into our arc reactor. Those are the only three types of ore that the arc reactor will work on. And then this conveyor is set up to remove the ingots, or this sorter rather is set up to remove all of the ingots that come out of the arc reactor, and it throws them over here into our ingot container. Now, anything that we want to grind up that might be coming off of the ship, we go ahead and we run it through here. This is our disassembly sorter. And here we have all of the items in the game that we normally want to disassemble. And that happens to be, at the moment, just about everything that constitutes a component. I could simply take the word components and I could just simply add it to the list. But I find that it works better this way because that way anytime that I want to remove something from the disassembly list, anytime I have something that I don't want disassembled, it's easier to just pull 1 or 2 items off the list rather than adding a whole bunch of things and then blacklisting them so they don't go through. Now this container, this is our keep container, and this sorting block is very important. This block is our keep shunt. And what that does is that shunts or moves anything that I don't want to have ground up, and it puts it in my keep container. Now in this particular case, I have construction components because they take so long to produce. I also have automatic rifles and ammunition simply because I like to have all of my military stuff in one container where I can find it. And I'm going to be doing a lot of construction soon, so I need a lot of interior plates and steel plates. So all of those materials are going to get pulled out of this initial sorting container. They're going to go into this keep container. And then in a perfect world, I would have a connector up here or on the sides where I could come by with my utility ship, and then I could remove all of the components that I was going to be working with. Now over here we have another sorting container, and this one is my refinery sorter, as you can see, and it takes the gold, magnesium, platinum, silicon, silver, and stone. And it removes all of those things from the initial sorting container, runs them through the refinery. Again, this sorting block at the far end removes all of the ingots and shoves everything into my ingot container. Now this assembler is a designated disassembler, and I even have it listed as such on the list. And as far as production is concerned, this one is set to disassemble in repeat mode. So anything that gets shoved into it is going to get disassembled into ingots, and then again another sorting block is going to shove all of those ingots into our ingot container. Our ingot container is where all of our ingots will reside until we send in a build order at this assembler, and this one is actually a designated assembler as opposed to the disassembler that we have here. Anything that we need to build, we go ahead and we program it into this assembler. The assembler takes the ingots out of the ingot container, builds everything. This sorting block removes all of the components that have been built and puts them into this container, this is designated as my production container. And as you can see, I ran 10 interior plates earlier just to test the system. Now it occurred to me as I was setting all of this up that there, technically speaking, is no difference between the keep container and the production container. One of them is materials that come right off of the ship that you're grinding up or the project that you're working on that you want to keep. The other one is, the only difference is that it's holding material that you yourself have produced. But if you made them, you probably want to keep them. So technically speaking, I could have one connector on top of the system up here, on top of my keep container. I could run a row of conveyors. I could run a conveyor tube from the keep container into the production container, and then anything that docked with either container could remove contents of both. And I will probably, in a future update, I'll probably do that. That is actually the way that my own system is set up on my ship, so I think I basically oversimplified the process here. Now, as you can see, we have our reactor underneath, and we have another sorting block here, and this sorting block is designated simply for uranium ore and uranium ingots. So uranium ore or uranium ingots get pulled out of the initial sorting container. They go through the sorting block into the uranium centrifuge, which is a mod that I have downloaded off of the workshop. And then the reactor automatically draws uranium ingots out of the centrifuge as they are produced. the most efficient place to store uranium is actually inside your reactor. There's no real reason to keep it anywhere else unless you have multiple reactors and you're trying to shuffle uranium around. So I try to store things as efficiently as possible. Now let me come up here for a moment. This control here, this is the grind sorter that I showed you that is directly behind the grind storage container. I have this one on its own save, on its own group, and I also have that on my hotbar if I activate my HUD. And that is primarily, it's down here, our grind sorter, which I can toggle on and off, and then our keep shunt, which we can toggle on and off. And that is primarily because there will be times where if I'm grinding up a particularly large ship, I may get to the point where I have too much stuff in the system already. In which case, the other containers are starting to fill up, the arc reactor and the refinery are starting to fill up, my assembler or disassembler are starting to fill up, and I need to slow the process down a little bit. But I don't want to necessarily stop grinding on the ship. So what I do is I can use this button, and as you can see, the container, the sorting block directly behind the container, let me turn that back on for a moment, the arrows have gone red, which indicates that that particular block is off. And therefore the grinders will still work, the material will still move into that container, but it'll sit there in that container until I turn that block back on. And then we have our keep shunt, which is the other one here. And again, if I decide for whatever reason that I'm grinding something and I have enough of something, if I have enough steel plates and I'm grinding something that has a lot of steel plates, I don't need any more, then I can either go into the menu and I can take steel plates out of that sorting block, or I can simply push this button, I can shut off the sorting block, and then it will stop shunting steel plates into my keep container. Now I also need to turn on all of our grinders, which means I now need to make sure that I don't fly into them. I have actually inflicted more deaths upon myself using tools than I have due to any sort of industrial accident. And let me see if I was clever enough. I often will put, no, I apparently not. I will often put a cockpit on the back of a ship that has the reactor far to the rear like this one does. And that's primarily because that way I can control the ship from far to the rear, and the ship will have power and some semblance of control right up until the very end, as it were. And since we don't have that, we're going to go ahead and we're going to turn off our inertial dampeners. And then we're just going to go ahead and get the ship going a little bit. And now, because the front thrusters are going to die first, I'm going to go ahead and get out of there. Now, for the purposes of the demonstration, I've turned up the grinding speed to the maximum, just so we can get the most bang for the buck, and so we don't have to wait here all day for the ship to grind up. Now, as you can see, without someone piloting it, the ship will tend to yaw a little bit. The grinders do impart a little bit of momentum into the ship, and as you can see, we're going to be straying here outside the range of our grind face. And this is one of the drawbacks to this, attaching one of these to your base, is the fact that it's stationary. But I will show you in a minute a good way to rectify that situation. Now let's go over here. Let's go back to our cockpit, and I can show you what's going on. Now, as you can see, all of our grinders are empty because we have a lot of material moving quickly, and everything is being shunted out very quickly. We have our initial sorting container, this is where everything goes. Our disassembly sorter is in the process right now of disassembling components. And as you can see, it's taking components in. As the thruster components here go down, the thruster components here will go up. The keep container I had set for construction components, steel plates, and interior plates. And if we had any ammunition or any assault rifles, then those would have wound up in here as well. But we didn't have any on this particular ship, so we're not going to have any in the container. And then our ingot container. At the moment, we're grinding up components that only have silicon and iron. I think actually the disassembly sorter is grinding up the motors, and it just got done with a load of computers. So, and then we have our production container, which I have not set to produce anything. Now our disassembler is in the process of working on small steel tubes, then it'll go to girders, and it'll move on down the list. Now, if it should turn out that you want things changed, for instance, you want the thruster components to go away faster, you go ahead and you just move them to the front of the list. And now, as you can see, our ingot sorter is pulling everything out of the disassembler and it's dumping it into the ingot container. Now, from here, anything that I want to build, I can go to production, I can go to my assembler, and I can tell it to make 30 plates, and it's going to go ahead and build those. It's taking the ingots right out of the container, and as you can see, that's done already. And then it goes ahead and it dumps them in the production container and it holds them. This way, you don't have a bunch of product sitting in your disassembler, choking up your disassembler. You don't have your ingots sitting up here, gumming up the works, since you only have 1,000 liters limit here. You only have 1,000 liters of limit here. So again, everything gets built, and then all of the items get removed so that your assemblers and your disassemblers, your refineries, arc reactors, and so on and so forth aren't getting all jammed up with material. The sorting blocks set to remove all basically will keep the product flowing. Now, I have a similar, actually, because of the fact that I don't have great luck when it comes to power tools, let me go ahead and shut that off so that I don't accidentally kill myself during my next demonstration. Now, this is a similar setup, but this would be more for a mining operation where you have a tremendous amount of ore. Now, this setup is assuming that you have some gravity on your station so that you want to promote your ore to fall into your collectors. You could simply use a connecting tube. You could use a connector. You could simply connect up to whatever your mining ship is, and then you can go ahead and have that move the material that way. But this works pretty well for an automated sort of a system. You just move your ship over the collectors, you go ahead and you dump everything out, and then you go ahead and move on. You don't have to stop and connect with anything. This works particularly well if your mining ship is large and cumbersome. Trying to connect a large, wallowing mining ship up to a relatively small station or a relatively fragile connecting tube can sometimes cause problems. This way you don't have to physically connect to the station, and there's less issue if you're having some sort of sync rate problem or something like that. You don't have to worry about forgetting to disconnect something and then accidentally ripping off your connector. Now, all of this has been altered to allow for ore. This is our grinding container, and this would actually be called a mining container or a collecting container. And as you can see, I have 1K of just about every kind of ore in here, and I place those in there ahead of time for purposes of the demonstration. This is our sorting container, and this one is just like the sorting container before. Once I turn this on, all of this material is going to get sucked out, and it's going to get sent into the various equipment. We have our arc reactor here. We have our refinery there. We do not have a keep container with regards to specific types of ore, except for stone. Now, for those of you that have actually done Space Engineer Survival, anyone who's been mining for more than an hour or two can tell you that you wind up getting several metric tons of stone in a relatively short period of time. And stone refines down into gravel, and it refines relatively quickly. But how many nuclear reactors do you really need? And that, at the moment, is the only thing that gravel is good for, is making nuclear reactors. If you don't want to have the stone clogging up your system and gumming up your refinery, taking up a lot of time and energy, in this particular case, I have this. This is my gravel shunt, and this is set up to permit stone and gravel. And again, it's set to drain all. So it's going to suck all of the stone and all of the gravel up into this container where it will stay until I'm ready for it. Now, the recent addition of ice and oxygen is what prompted me to have to reshoot this video recently. Here is our oxygen production equipment, and here is our oxygen storage tank. Now, because like the refineries, the oxygen storage equipment will automatically draw ice in. So you don't actually need a sorting block to shove the ice into the oxygen generator. The oxygen tank is set to store oxygen. One of the differences with this piece of equipment, though, is the fact that unless you put an oxygen bottle in it, it will not produce oxygen unless you have some place to store it, or you have someplace, a room that needs oxygen that it will then pump oxygen into. If your system is closed and already oxygenated, or if your system is wide open and therefore the vents are all shut, it will not produce oxygen unnecessarily, so it won't waste power. It will simply store the ice as needed. Now, one of the reasons that I left this as a conveyor tube as opposed to making this a sorting block, as I typically do on the backside of a piece of equipment, there are very, very few ports for the oxygen production. The only one that we have available is under here, and as you can see, that's somewhat of a twist to get to. So I left that conveyor tube so that material can move either way from this container to that oxygen generator. And I did that primarily because that way I can take oxygen bottles, I can go ahead, stuff them in the oxygen generator, which unfortunately it doesn't have any ice in it right now, so it's not producing anything. But I can move oxygen bottles to and from very easily from a nearby container, as opposed to having to worry about accessing another port. And then again, I have an assembler here, and all of this ore gets turned into ingots. All of the ingots get dumped here into the ingot container, and then again, if I produce anything, then everything goes through here and into my production container. So let me go ahead and demonstrate this, and we're going to go into third person for a minute. And you can see on the right hand side of the screen, you can see the red arrows coming from our sorting block. And as I showed earlier, here's our grinding container with all of our material. You can see that all of the other containers are empty and all of the equipment is empty. So we go ahead, we turn that on. You can see the power usage starts to come up as everything starts to turn on. I do have an overly large reactor here. So now we go to our inventory. Our initial sorting container only has ice in it because the ice has not been drawn into the oxygen generator. The stone container contains the stone, and the gold and the cobalt are obviously being produced because we have the ingots flowing. And now we can go here. As I said, the oxygen generator does not have any ice in it. You could easily move the ice over there by hand, since the oxygen generator makes a perfectly fine storage vessel for ice. The refinery is merrily chewing away at everything. And again, you could change the order of things. If you need silver more than you need silicon, then you can go ahead and move things around however you need them. The arc furnace is working on the cobalt. I actually prefer to have it go through the iron because it goes through the iron quickly. So the iron will be moving along. And the uranium automatically got moved into the uranium centrifuge, and so that's automatically being pulled off into the large reactor. So everything is moving along automatically. Now, because we now have ice, and because I'm hoping, well, I'm an idiot. I just realized I don't have oxygen turned on this map. So I have an oxygen generator and I have an oxygen bottle, but because I don't have oxygen turned on, I'm never going to use any oxygen. And therefore it won't be produced, and it won't be stored in the bottle, and it won't be stored in the oxygen storage tank, which we also have on here. Well, poo. I will at some point have to turn on oxygen and make absolutely sure that my system works. However, I hope that you get the idea. As I said, this would normally be set up in a type of station where you would have gravity, and therefore I set up everything horizontally. If for whatever reason you wanted to have things going in a different direction, you just slap down a gravity generator and just make sure that the gravity is pulling the ore down into the collectors. Now, earlier we showed how we can do things with a grinding station, and you could very easily put a gyroscope and half a dozen or more thrusters on this thing, and then you could actually fly it as a ship. It's got more than enough power. It would probably not be horribly maneuverable because of all of the mass at the front end, but a judicious use of thrusters and gyroscopes would probably correct that problem. Or you could build a custom ship that would be encompassing all of these ideas. One of the drawbacks to space engineers is once you get started building something, you tend to get a little crazy. Now, this is my dedicated grinding ship, which is called Dawson's Christian. For those of you that listen to really old folk music and know the reference, congratulations. For those of you that don't, I recommend that you Google or look for Dawson's Christian on YouTube and listen to the song. I've been listening to it for a number of years, and it's very near and dear to my heart. Now, the Christian, as you can see, is a much upscaled version of the grinding station that I showed you before. I deliberately built the grinding head large enough so that it would encompass any of the current freighters that we have available in the game that can be captured. I take them end on, and I basically set their inertial dampeners on, make sure that they have enough power to actually run them. And then I start at one end of the ship with the grinders running, and I basically devour the entire ship. It started out much smaller than this, of course, but after the first time that I had to grind up a large military hauler, one of the big heavily armored ones, yeah, I decided after 3 weeks of doing that by hand that I was going to build something like this. Now, as you can see, this is basically a very upscaled version of what I had before. I have my initial grinding containers, and I have those all connected together. So essentially that's one gigantic cargo container, since I have them all connected. I have 4 sorting blocks that draw all of the material out of them, and I have all of those set on the control panel so that I can shut them off. And with 12 cargo containers, I can grind up 1 or 2 fairly large ships without having to worry about throwing anything else into the system. I have an oxygen system here. I don't believe that I have it fully operational yet, and I certainly don't have the ship sealed off against vacuum, so I haven't activated the oxygen on the map yet. I have a couple of arc reactors and a couple of refineries set up, and the reason that I only have 2 of each is because I don't tend to get a lot of ore. My friend Dragle, who shares the survival map with me, has his mining ship Tiny, and Tiny takes care of all of the mining, and then we have a space station that takes care of all of the refining processes. So the only reason I have arc reactors and refineries on the Christian is for the occasional freighter that I pick up that happens to have some ore on it, and I don't feel like shuffling the ore back and forth to the space station. Now, these are my 4 initial sorting containers. Everything goes into those, and then everything gets parsed out as necessary. I have 3 disassemblers, these 3 here, and all of the parts that I don't want to keep get disassembled and go into my half a dozen ingot containers. This is a separate container with all of my military hardware in it. This is my ammunition container. I put all of my ammo and all of my explosives and military hardware in there for later use. I'm currently building a battle cruiser, so I'm going to be needing a lot of ammunition. This tube here is my keep shunt, and again, anything that I want to keep gets picked up by the sorting block on the back end over here, or on the front end rather, and it sends everything back here, and I have quite a few keep containers. Underneath the floor, I have a system similar to what I had on the other station, which is strictly for uranium ingots and uranium ore. Goes up here, goes into a small cargo container where the 2 uranium centrifuges can then pick it up and then process it, and then it can go into all of my reactors. Now, my reactors are currently shut off primarily because I'm running the entire ship on solar right now. I prefer to run things on solar power whenever possible. And this container back here is another container that I'm going to be using. It's more or less a pseudo sort of production and industry container. I have it hooked into my system up here so that it can access things from the initial sorting container. What I can do is I can turn off all of these initial sorting blocks so that everything gets into the initial sorting containers and then waits. And this container, like all of the rest of them, is piped through the roof of the Christian up to the top deck. And it comes out through here into this system, which I was experimenting with the idea of having a projector that will build a ship, and then I will have all of the necessary parts in the cargo container down below, and then as the ship is projected, then it will be built by the welders. I'm still experimenting with that. I have not had a lot of experience with the projectors yet, so that's a work in progress. Now, I did not download the excuse me. I did not download the lettering mod for this particular map. Normally, all of these are marked. This is my keep container. Over here, I have my production container, and somehow I managed to get a light armor block there instead of a heavy armor block. This is my ingot container. I have this set up so that if Dragle wants to come over and grab some of the ingots and then use his own processing capacity for making components to build his ship or his space station, then he can do so. This is my ammunition container, and this is my input container. If I do happen to have a ship that has a lot of components on it, since components don't go through grinders will not reduce components down, I can sometimes have a lot of components floating around in space. So if I happen to capture something that has a lot of components on board, then I just go ahead and I dock it here, and then I go ahead and drain everything off. And is that a shadow, or is that damage to my armor? No, I think that's a shadow. Okay. So as you can see, now this entire operation is mobile. The ship handles pretty well. I have a large number of thrusters on it. The mass is close to 15 million kilograms. And I normally have 2 large Titan engines back here. However, again, I forgot to download that mod. However, with the 6 large thrusters that I have here and the remaining thrusters that I have up front, the ship moves along well enough. I very, very seldom have to move it terribly far. I normally bring the captured ships to me instead of having me fly my big, huge, massive ship to them. It seems to be more fuel efficient. So I hope this has been fun and educational. If you have any questions on how you might streamline your processes or automate your processes for your base or your ship, please go ahead and feel free to ask questions in the comments below or drop me a message. If you would like to have any tutorial videos on any specific subjects, then please go ahead and feel free to drop those in the comments as well. As always, likes are appreciated and subscriptions doubly so. This is Darkhizer signing off. Have a good day.